Yo, what is up, guys? Your boy Howard back at it with another video. Today I'm gonna go in depth about part two of JoJo Bizarre Adventure, which is called Part Two Battle Tendency to be exact. So let's go ahead and get into it. So pretty much, guys, if you remember from my last video, I talked about part one of JoJo, which was I talked about Jonathan Joestar. So now we're getting into part two, and part two talks about Joseph Joestar, which is Jonathan's grandson. So Jonathan's grandson, Joseph Joestar. So pretty much we're going from a character from part one, Jonathan. He was a real brave, noble type of guy, very pure-hearted. Now Joseph, we're transitioning to Joseph now. He's, he's pure-hearted too. You know, he's a good person, but he's just so cocky, very cocky. Just talks a lot of crap to like his opponents and stuff, and likes to outsmart them. But he backs it up. Like with the shit talking. He backs it up with his actions, and obviously that goes into play whenever he fights his opponents and stuff. He outsmarts them and everything. So it's a fun. He's an interesting Joe Star, and I would honestly say part two is probably my second favorite part out of all the JoJo so far, like out of the whole show. But pretty much the gist of this one is obviously it talks about Joseph Joestar, and it's kind of interesting because it takes place in like three different like areas of the world. I think it takes place like in New York at first, and then they go to Mexico, and then they go to they believe like Egypt. It's kind of like, yeah, or Europe. Sorry, Europe. So pretty much you get introduced to Joseph, and then he also in this part I believe he teams up with Caesar Zeppeli. So pretty much, guys, if you remember from the last part, Jonathan he was partnered. He partnered up with William Zeppeli. So pretty much Caesar is so yeah. So, sorry. So pretty much Caesar is the grandson of William Zeppeli. So it's kind of crazy how like Joseph and Caesar they kind of connected from their grandfathers, and now they're in a part together, and obviously they get to fight together too. Like they get to just take on the antagonist of this part, and I believe they also team up with Lisa. Lisa, she's kind of like their mentor, kind of teaches them the ripple technique throughout this part, and so pretty much they're taking on these the Pillar Men. So in this part, those are the main antagonists of the Pillar Men. I think they're called Cars, Wamu, and then it's like ACDC. I think that's ACDC. I think that's how you pronounce it. But pretty much they take on them. They're hunting this like red stone called Aja, and so pretty much they're seeking that to become ultimate life forms. So pretty much they're going to become like unbeatable and just wreak havoc all over the world. And pretty much like Joseph and Caesar, they're going to take them on. And man, this part is just so fun. Like you just see how Joseph battles battles with like just with witty comebacks, and then obviously backs it up without smarting them, and just obviously he has skills as well with the ripple effect and everything, or the ripple technique. Sorry, the ripple technique. And then Caesar, he has like this type of bubble type of technique that's pretty unique too. And you see him use it a lot against Wamu, and honestly, that fight scene was just man, I'm not gonna lie, it made me tear up, man. Just it was just such an emotional fight, because I think before this happens, like before he goes one on one with Wamu, one of the Pillar Men, um, Joseph and Caesar have like this huge fight, like about just family legacies. Caesar's preaching about like what, like you should care about what our ancestors did before us. Like it matters, and we could you know have a chance to be better than them. And Joseph was kind of more like, I don't really care, man. Like that's not who cares? It doesn't affect me, so I'm gonna continue to live my life the way I want to. And it's just he just didn't care. Like he was just very insensitive towards Caesar's viewpoint on that. And this led to like a huge argument. And keep in mind, like these two always butted heads throughout the whole part. Like I think that's what made their relationship really unique is that they just always butted heads. Like they just never agreed on anything. But I mean, obviously, when it came down to like fighting together, they were pretty, they went pretty hard, man. They're pretty, they're pretty cool to watch, like in throughout the show. But obviously, this leads after that whole argument that they had. This leads to Caesar taking on Wamu by himself, and obviously, it's an emotional one-on-one conversation that they had or the type of fight scene that they had. And obviously, I don't want to spoil it. I just feel bad for spoiling it. I don't want to spoil it for people. Just know that something happens, and pretty much Joseph finds out, and he has to take on the Pillar Man as well. So it's just um, it's a great watch. Honestly, it's just very suspenseful. The action scenes just get better and better from like part one, to part two now. So it's pretty fun. But honestly, like I just think I just got a whole lot out of this whole part. I think that's why it's like it has a special place in my heart specifically for this part because since we have part one kind of explained like Jonathan's backstory and everything, like with Dio, and I feel like the only thing I could really say, like I guess what I got out of that from part one was probably that they have like that type of I guess if you have like maybe like a half sibling of like a stepbrother, like like a stepbrother, maybe like you could have that rivalry or something. But I've never experienced that in my life, so it's kind of like hard for me to be like, oh well, I can relate to that. It's like I've never had a stepbrother, but I can see maybe for other people, maybe they could see it like that. But for part two specifically, man, I just think there's just so much to talk about. Like I think for me, um, after watching part two, it reminded me, I guess, a time where I had I went to a baseball tournament with my cousin. I got invited to it. At first, I didn't want to go. I was just so nervous about going. I guess just I mean, I think at the time I was like what, like maybe like 15 or 14. But I was just so nervous about like I just got in my head about like, oh, what if I mess up? What if I'm like a weak link? I'm not really much help to the team. It's just those pessimistic thoughts, that just kind of kept me like, I don't want to go. But luckily at the time, my dad kind of talked me in. He's like, "Man, you should go, man. You never know like what type of experience you're gonna have. You might miss out on the opportunity, like building a better connection with your cousin. You know what I mean? So back in that time, I ended up going, and it was a tournament, and it was like a world, it's kind of like one of those tournaments they have at the end of the year with like each select team that you're on, like in baseball. So pretty much it was like a world baseball tournament, and then it was taking place in St. Louis. So pretty much um, pretty much we were playing against other teams from like all over like the U.S. Like people from like from Dallas, from like Austin, from like Kansas, from like Florida. Like it's a huge tournament, and I'm not gonna lie, yeah, I felt intimidated about going. It's just I just didn't think I was gonna perform. Maybe I was gonna hold my cousin back, and it was just being insecure. But I'm so glad I went because I would have never experienced that with my cousin. I would have just missed out on that opportunity to like get closer to my cousin, my uncle, my other cousin, and then like with my aunt as well. And I think this is what that part two specifically of JoJo reminded me of this time because I feel like it is just so important to always take a chance and making memories. Even if like something goes wrong or something fails, as long as you're able to take that chance, take that risk of making that potential memory, I just think it's all, I mean, I just think eventually, like me being more optimistic about it, I feel like it's always going to work out anyway, like you're always going to create that memory. And I'm just so grateful to have, to be able to experience that with my cousin. You know what I mean? I feel like we got a lot closer and everything. And, um, there were times I believe I mean, I'm sure if he ever sees this, I guarantee he's going to remember this. But I remember there was a time, during the tournament, I think, man, we were losing pretty bad in that game. And I remember I get hit by a pitch. So pretty much in baseball, if you get hit by a pitch, you get to take a free base. So I took first. And I remember the catcher threw me out from first because I was like leading off too much, and I was trying to get back in time so I could be safe. But he threw me out, and I remember I was like, "Oh shit, man!" I was just so like, man, I messed up, And I went back to the dugout, and I remember I was like, man, I was kind of low key, just kind of like I was like kind of not like being dramatic about it, but I was low key kind of sulking a little bit. I was like, oh fuck, man, I like messed up. But I remember at the end of the game, my cousin was like, man, you need to get over that, man. Like you can't let that drag you down, man. You got to get over that. And I remember after that, I was like, oh, like I didn't really get mad at him for saying that. I'm glad he told me that, man, because I feel like I woke up and I feel like after that, um, I started hitting a lot better. I started performing a lot better. So sometimes you need that in your life. You know what I mean? Sometimes I needed, maybe I needed that specific conversation with my cousin for us to get closer, for us um, to collaborate better on a team, like specifically in this tournament. So going back to the show, I believe it's always worth, taking a risk, taking that chance to make that memory, like it's, in this case, going back to the show, um, obviously maybe Caesar and Joseph needed that argument, needed that disagreement to really understand each other later. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. Like, kind of going back to like what my cousin told me, I didn't really take it as a negative thing, dude. I think it's like something that I really needed to hear at that time. So that's what I'm saying. I would have never had that connection with him or had that experience with him if I was like, oh, I don't want to go. I don't want to go to St. Louis. I'm scared. I'm letting my own fear dictate what I want to do. And I'm telling you guys, please do not let your fear take over. You need to take as many memories, like take as many chances you can to create better memories. You could live on and talk about forever, because I feel like me and my cousin, we never stop talking about St. Louis. Every time I see him, we always talk about St. Louis. Like, man, do you remember St. Louis, bro? It was crazy. Such a crazy moment, such a crazy time. I'm so glad to experience that with him. And I hope if he sees this, man, I hope that I still care about you, man. I love you, dude. And just, I hope you're doing good. I got to make a trip over there one day, but I just know we're both kind of busy with life and everything. But we'll schedule something. We'll schedule something. But going back to part two of the show, that's what reminded me of. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, like with family legacies. Obviously, I'm not gonna lie. I was gonna have to side with Caesar on this one because I do care about family legacies too. Because I do care about like what my grandfather did before. But not to the point where like you let it affect you. Now, and I think that's where I side with Joseph too. It's a very good argument from both sides. But I would have to agree with Joseph too, like how kind of like, man, it doesn't matter, because like I'm living my own life and I'm not gonna let them affect me, like obviously I think it's important to understand both sides. Like Caesar's is more like, dude, you should care about your family legacy. Yes, I understand that, um, but you can't let it affect like your own life. That's like where I think the line needs to be drawn. But I mean, overall, like I believe, like what I got out of this whole part is that you gotta take chances. You gotta be able to create those memories because you never know. Like you might not ever be able to have that chance. You might not be able to even see this person. Like obviously in this, like going to the back to the show, in this case, this is life or death. So obviously they had that last argument. They never spoke to each other again. But in my case, I would have never experienced that with my cousin. Going out to having that baseball tournament and everything. So obviously it was a different type of fight. They were battling paler men and trying to prevent them from gaining the red stone of Aja, from becoming ultimate life forms, to like, compared to me and my cousin, we were, you know, battling against different guys all over the US, in baseball. Obviously it's a different fight, but you can see where I'm going with this, but I hope you guys get a lot out of this. I hope you guys check out this part specifically. It is such a fun watch. And yeah, if you guys just keep up with me, like on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, just to go ahead and leave a like, subscribe, leave some comments, and let me know what you think about part two. And I'll go ahead and catch you in the next video.